Okay, this is Erin Somerville at McCallum High School, continuing on with bureaucracy. So you exist already in a very large bureaucracy. You are daily interacting with this school in this school district. And so I kind of want to stick with something you know to help you understand how a bureaucracy works. Now, you get to sit here. You get to sit here. Paid for by tax dollars, you get a free public education. And that is essentially state law. But the state law that provides for free public education for students until 18, it doesn't go through every single detail. There's not enough law that could be thought up to really establish every single procedure in a school. So the school day is set up essentially by the state, and then the districts adapt to follow state law. But not every little detail of how the school operates is governed by state law. So the state passes this, and they really send it on to the experts, to the bureaucrats who know about education, who know their student population, to make more of the detailed decisions. So your principal and your teachers and your counselors, we are all hired to carry out this work, and we have broad strokes for how to do that given to us. But then there's all sorts of little decisions that we have the discretion to make, to decide how things will work. So, your teachers make rules for their classroom. They have their own grading policies that vary teacher to teacher. And that's okay, because how I run my classroom as a government teacher is going to be very different from how a science teacher runs their classroom. They need to make sure that you know how to follow rules when using, laboratory equipment. I don't need to do that, so I don't have rules in place for, how to put out a fire if there were a fire, or how to clean the beakers properly. That doesn't make sense in my classroom. I make rules, I make procedures that reflect that. I also, as a social studies teacher, teach 12th graders differently than how I would teach freshmen. So the school district and the state knows that each teacher is going to have to make a variety of decisions and rules that fit the needs of the classroom. And in fact, your teachers, like other bureaucrats, if they actually interact with their clients, you are the client getting the free public education. We call those ones street-level bureaucrats. So essentially, because I know your face, I know your name, I know your story a little bit, that makes me a street-level bureaucrat. So I'm not at the top of the organizational pyramid. I'm actually at the very base of it, interacting every day with the clients who are seeking that benefit. And so in order to do my job, I make specific rules, I enforce those rules, there might be punishments, and I do that according to the needs of my classroom. My mission is to deliver the education. I have to follow state law in doing so, but then I can make a lot of decisions for what's best in the classroom. But what does it sound like when I can make all those decisions for you? Because you, who needs the public education, also you're looking to get the diploma. You're looking to walk across the stage. There's something you need from me specifically, and that is for me to pass you. You need to get a passing grade from me so that you can walk across the stage. And in order to do so, you're going to have to follow my grading policy, follow those rules. So in your daily life, I am not the most powerful person you'll meet. The governor is very powerful, the principal is very powerful, but in your daily life, these street-level bureaucrats have an awful lot of power, because essentially, on a micro level, they're doing the work of all three branches: making rules, enforcing rules, and then judging. And and then you will have to conform in that. So something interesting about the bureaucracy is when we look at how it does its job, it essentially takes on what the three other branches do. It can make rules, it can enforce them, and then it can really judge them to see if you're complying. So, for example, the EPA does all three. It follows federal law, but the EPA establishes how those laws will be carried out. And then if you don't comply with those laws, you might have to pay some sort of fine. The EPA is doing on a micro level what the three branches do. So remember, the bureaucracy has discretion in making more specific the laws that it has to carry out. And then those people working in the bureaucracy, the unelected folks who have actually passed some sort of civil service exam or gotten some sort of licensing or certificate to show they're qualified, they have an awful lot of power in how the law is actually doled out, how it's actually implemented. Now, there's a lot of problems for people in, or I should say, let me rephrase. Bureaucracies often have a mission, and then when we see how the mission's being carried out, there's a disconnect. So we would say those ones don't always work so well. And so there's a whole bunch of reasons why, and I'm going to go through a few. It's going to be really hard for a bureaucracy to implement a law that it itself doesn't understand. So if a state legislature passes down a law and says, go for it, they've decided your agency is the one that's going to carry it out. And when the bureaucrats who have to come up with a way to make that law a reality look at the law and go, well, we still have questions. We don't understand what you want us to do. Then that bureaucracy, as it continues, is probably not going to carry out its function very well, mainly because it doesn't understand its function well enough. So to stick to the school level, I would say this campus doesn't have very clear dress code rules. Some of them are very clear and they just don't get enforced. But ones like the no short shorts, there isn't a clear line. I mean, there could be. Some middle schools do the finger at your side. If your shorts are higher than where your finger falls at your side when your arms are down, that would be too short. But our school doesn't actually lay that out as the rule. And so when the principal comes on over the PA and says, girls no short shorts, he's talking to those students, but then he's also talking to the teachers, reminding us to enforce this. But that becomes very, very tricky to enforce because we haven't been given a definition of what that is. And not to mention, some teachers would feel like their mission, their overall goal, is to deliver public education, not help you get dressed in the morning. So there's going to be, when there's not a clear law, it puts the burden of making almost too many decisions. And so you might notice the dress code isn't very well enforced, and it isn't very well enforced by teachers, because teachers might be reticent to make these judgments and enforce these rules that they don't fully understand. Another problem would be if a program design is flawed. And I kind of want to bring you back to human nature. Maybe there's been a time in your life where you start writing a paper. You write 2 paragraphs in, and you realize these 2 paragraphs, they're garbage. They're not very good. But you've become emotionally attached to some of the sentences, and you think if you tweak it, you can make it better. And so most people, when they've written 2 paragraphs, they try to keep some of it and maybe arrange some others, but they're not very often going to just say, let me crumple it up, start over, and I bet I could come up with something better. And this happens in bureaucracies where they start to design a plan. They have the agency, they figured out their resources, they got some rules and some jobs set up to carry it out. But then they realize this actually didn't work, and then they try to fix it, keeping that main framework, and the main framework might be the problem. So trying to stick with our McCallum analogy, I'd say pep rallies got the program design of pep rally is flawed. Pep rally is great. School spirit is great. But there's so many flaws in its design that it keeps it from working well. And by working well, I mean people attending. So if you think about the time of day of pep rally, it's at the end of the day, no roll is taken after. So that tells students that if they don't stay the whole time, there's no consequence as far as attendance goes. Now, mind you, pep rally could be in the morning or in the middle of school, but no one's really complained, so it doesn't seem urgent to go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, let's change this so we get better attendance if that was our goal. Another problem with it is that If you don't want to go, of course we don't make you go. We provide the cafeteria for you to hang out in. But if we did imagine that everybody wants to go, there's not enough room in the gym. So we want everyone to go, but we also sort of, our program design is set up where we actually need some folks to be too cool for school, to skip the pep rally and go to the cafeteria just because we don't have space. Which brings us to another big problem for why most bureaucracies don't work that well, and that's a lack of resources. We don't have enough space in the gym. But if your teacher doesn't have enough textbooks, if there aren't enough desks in the room, that could be a lack of resources that affects the classroom and its ability to deliver public education, to deliver a quality education. Standard operating procedures. These are the rules that have to be followed in the bureaucracy. And you could think of those can be like a handcuff, because while a principal and a counselor and 7 teachers might look at a senior and say, you are qualified, you have done your classes, we think that you are ready to become, to have your diploma and move on in your life, you are ready to be a good citizen, but we can't give you a diploma because you missed this one PE credit. And that was because you transferred from another school that didn't transfer. Exceptions can't be made. And so if our real mission is to get people graduated that are qualified, it might mean sometimes that it'd be helpful if rules could be broken, but they can't be. So your counselor can look you in the face and say, look, you've done everything, but that one PE credit from California didn't work, and so you're going to have to do PE over the summer. That can feel very frustrating. Now, the opposite of standard operating procedures, and these do coexist at the same time, is that the people in the bureaucracy, because of the nature of how a bureaucracy works, have administrative discretion. They do have some decision making. So if you come in 1 minute late or 4 minutes late, your teacher can decide if you're tardy or not. I mean, school says when the bell rings you're tardy, but your teacher can go over there and click tardy, absent, or present. And so if you feel as though that administrative discretion is used in an unfair way, then you would say it's not working well. But often that administrative discretion is used in a fair way. It just depends how you interact with it. So I'll give you an example of how it's an important thing. I had a student that was late 2 minutes every day to class, every single day. And I never marked her tardy, and no one in the class cared. Now this was because she was in a wheelchair, and it was going to take her a while to get to class, because the halls are crowded, and you know even when you're walking at your fastest, it can be hard to get to class on time. So I treated the student differently. I used the discretion to decide the student was never late, because they were always late 2 minutes because of difficulty getting to the class that was unique to them. And that was a way for, again, the teacher to have the power of decision making to hopefully deliver fairness to the students. Okay, so why they don't work well. Some basic vocabulary, and we kind of went over this when we looked at the chart. You've got your cabinet departments, and those just refer to the departments where each head is called a secretary and makes up his cabinet of advisors. When this country started, there was no mention of these departments in the Constitution, but George Washington had 3 cabinets, and he appointed the 3 secretaries. That would be, at the time, the War Department, the Treasury Department, and the State Department. And then you have the other 3, the other bureaucratic agencies, and you should have those labeled on your chart. So we're going to pause here and go to the last part of the lecture. So stopping here and go to the next one.